Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we'll be going over the fastest and best ways to get to level 100 in Diablo 4. Maximize your playtime by focusing on the right kind of content. I'll break down the various benefits for running each type of activity, as well as a comparison of experience points. Let's get right into it. First, we'll need to create our seasonal character. Be sure to skip the campaign, pick the seasonal realm, and for the first time, we want to start out in World Tier 2 for the new 50% experience points bonus. Before diving right in, I highly recommend researching a leveling build for your class. These builds typically have strong wave clearing abilities even without gearing for it. Start out in Sanctuary by completing the seasonal quest. Complete this until you unlock the seasonal vendor that's going to be pretty important later on. For leveling 1 to 50, my top recommendation is running the new and updated Helltide. The update made Helltides in Season 4 accessible in World Tier 1 and 2. To locate a Helltide, look for the red areas on your map. Helltides are up for 55 minutes and down for 5 minutes before switching to a new region. When you enter this region, you'll have 3 new user interface elements in the top right. Defeating enemies in Helltide will drop aberrant cinders. You'll want to collect these to open special Helltide chests. Defeating enemies and opening Helltide chests will increase your threat meter. The higher the threat meter, the more you'll be ambushed by enemies. When you max out your threat, you'll constantly be ambushed by enemies, leading to a final boss elite enemy called a Hellborn. Don't hold on to too many aberrant cinders. Dying in Helltide will reduce your aberrant cinders by half and also reset your threat meter. Defeating Hellborns and opening Helltide chests have a chance at dropping Baneful hearts. You'll need Baneful hearts to activate a new event called the Accursed Ritual. Locate these on your map by this icon. For those of you who have played Helltide before, Helltides in World Tier 1 and 2 will be limited to only chests of mysteries, and instead of costing 250 aberrant cinders, they'll only cost 100. Helltides also have their own exclusive whispers. Be sure not to ignore these when farming Helltides for experience points. The Helltide leveling strategy is all about making sure you're never skipping groups of enemies. To maximize your experience points per hour, you'll want to non-stop move from group to group of enemies without stopping. It's also important to have a secondary objective in mind. If you're nearing or have 100 aberrant cinders, pin a chest of mysteries on the map and continue hopping from group to group on your way there. Also, keep your eye out for whisper objectives. Examples of this are destroying Helltide structures or something like interacting with doomsayers. The only instance you'd want to stop doing this is if somebody activates the Accursed Ritual nearby. Depending on how strong the players participating in this event are, is potentially your best source of experience points in the game. The Accursed Ritual boss, the Blood Maiden, can be pretty difficult. At each marker of the Blood Maiden's health bar, she'll become untargetable and summon 4 Hellborn adds. When you see a circle underneath you, run in circles avoiding the path of your teammates. When the Blood Maiden leaps and bounces off the ground, at all costs try to avoid the area of effect from this move. It deals an extreme amount of damage. Be sure to turn in your Grim Favors at the Tree of Whispers when you're maxed out for a large chunk of experience points. Check your Grim Favors by opening your map and looking at the bottom of the screen. Let's compare the experience points from popular leveling activities. Legion events are multi-step events that happen every 35 minutes. Check the top left of your map to see if a Legion event is spawning soon. You'll want to arrive a little early to pick up the Campfire experience points bonus, and you'll also want to invite anyone nearby for another free bonus. Completing a Legion event at level 39 gave me 227,000 experience points, about 1 level, for just over 6 minutes. Domain Tunnel resets are great for players who don't mind grinding the same thing over and over. Domain Tunnel is a dungeon located just west of the Korbach waypoint. The goal is to clear the first area of the dungeon as soon as possible. Hit Leave Dungeon, open your map, and reset dungeons, and repeat the process over and over again. A run of Domain Tunnel took me 1 minute at level 33 and gave me 32,000 experience points, about a fourth of my level. At level 33, I ran around Helltide for 3 minutes, killing groups of enemies and completing a whisper. I got 135,000 experience points, a little under 1 level. I popped an Accursed Ritual, which took about 2 minutes to complete, and received about 107,000 experience points, about 75% of my level. Opening a Tortured Gift of Mysteries gave me 20,000 experience points, or about 10% of my level. Turning in my Grim Favors at the Tree of Whispers from completing Helltide Whispers gave me 50% of my level, and completing a full threat bar landed me another 85,000 experience points, or about 50% of my level. Overall, in about 25 minutes of doing Helltide, I was able to get 5 levels. Here are some tips for speeding up your leveling process. Don't forget to complete the priority quest for your class. These offer important buffs or utility that you don't want to miss out on. Class quests are done at level 15 for most classes, 25 for Necromancer. Try not to spend too much time in town. Consider that every time you return to town, you're not currently leveling. Pick up absolutely every piece of gear you find. You should salvage all of these at the blacksmith for important crafting materials needed for later on. Only upgrade your gear about every 10 levels. The difference in gear levels in the early leveling process don't make much of a difference. Focus on mostly keeping your weapon updated. As you near level 50, you'll need to complete a capstone dungeon to get to the next world tier. I recommend completing your capstone at level 50. Capstones serve as a benchmark tool for the next world tier. If you can't complete it solo, you probably won't survive in that world tier. The Cathedral of Light is a 2-level dungeon, each with their own boss. As long as you have a decent build and gear, there's not much to worry about. In World Tier 3, we have a couple problems to solve. Our survivability is going to be a major concern. It's hard to level if you're constantly dying. The problems we're facing are armor, elemental resistance, and max health. First step is upgrading your gear to a full set of sacred equipment. The difference in base armor and weapon damage is massive. To target farm certain pieces of sacred gear, there are more types of chests in Helltide that drop specific equipment slots. Turning in Grim Favors at the Tree of Whispers is another good option for target farming gear. Stop by the Iron Wolves vendor for a free cache of sacred gear. Upgrade your armor to protect yourself from physical damage by tempering your head, body, and legs at the blacksmith with worldly endurance. Aim for total armor or max health. Imprint Juggernauts or Disobedience at the occultist for a large boost to your armor. Elemental resistance will stop elite enemies from one-shotting you with elemental damage. Get elemental resistance by finding resistance on your armor affixes, keeping your jewelry updated which have natural resistance built into them, or by adding diamond gems to your jewelry sockets. Keep in mind, you'll need to do this again in World Tier 4 when moving over to Ancestral gear, but this is a common practice for solving any issues with survivability. For leveling, everything is still the same. You'll want to do a combination of Legion events and Helltides to stay efficient with leveling. In Helltides in World Tier 3, when defeating Hellborns from the Threat Meter event, you should start to see profane mine cages dropping. These consumable items increase the level of Helltide enemies by 10, and also increase the amount of aberrant cinders and threat meter that you gain. This is the definite go-to for leveling in Helltides from now on, as long as you have good survivability. Dying while a mine cage is active will reset the status, requiring you to use another. Don't forget to take advantage of your season blessings by spending your smoldering ashes on the Urn of Aggression. You'll eventually receive a passive experience points bonus of 20%. Make sure you take a minute to take down some world bosses. World bosses spawn every 3 hours and 30 minutes, and currently this is the primary way of collecting scattered prisms. You'll need a lot of these in the endgame for socketing jewelry to your gear. At level 70, you're ready to complete your next capstone dungeon, the Fallen Temple in Dry Steppes. Once again, it's really straightforward with a few easy to complete dungeon objectives, but with my experience in the past, Elias can be a real pain to defeat. World Tier 4, once again, is going to become much more difficult. Follow my World Tier Transitioning guide on survivability from earlier in the video. Over the course of level 70 to 100, you're going to want to get your armor to the cap at around 9,200. You'll need 120% of each resistance type to cap out your resistance. And once you hit these caps, focus on stacking max health and damage reduction. Once you're in full Ancestral gear, it's time to focus on leveling again. Ultimately, you'll have two options, doing Helltides or switching over to Nightmare dungeons. Personally for me, I did level 70 to 100 doing purely Nightmare dungeons and world bosses anytime they were up. In my opinion, Nightmare dungeons are such a strong option because of the glyph leveling you'll need to do to make your character stronger. And because glyph experience only comes from Nightmare dungeons, it's just unavoidable. Completing 2 Nightmare dungeons at level 73 gave me 11,600,000 experience points in 10 minutes, or about 1.25 levels. I did this with mobs that were 8 to 9 levels above me. Experience points max out from mobs that are 10 levels above you. Running through Helltide for 20 minutes at level 74 gave me 14,400,000 experience points, or almost exactly 2 levels. As you can see, Nightmare dungeons and Helltides are very similar in experience points. This is why I chose Nightmare dungeons over Helltides for level 70 to 100. Around level 80, if you're geared enough for it, I recommend running a tier 41 plus Nightmare dungeon for guaranteed item powered 925 legendary gear. This will hurt your experience point gains, but you'll start collecting collecting your endgame 925 gear in exchange for harder experience points. To start your first Nightmare dungeon, you'll want to do a Whisper turn-in. Whispers guarantee Nightmare sigils to drop needed to do your first Nightmare dungeon. Nightmare sigils are also guaranteed from the end screen of a Nightmare dungeon. As you start to accumulate sigil powder, you can craft Nightmare sigils at the Occultist for additional options. Nightmare sigils modify dungeons with positive and negative affixes. Avoid the negatives Drifting Shade and Stormbane's Wrath. These negatives are really annoying to deal with. You'll want to complete Nightmare dungeons that are around 10 levels above you for optimal experience points. Make sure that you're not completing Nightmare dungeons that take you more than 5 minutes to reach the end. In this instance, faster experience points are better than harder experience points. Here's a list of my favorite Nightmare dungeons to do for experience points in Season 4. Don't forget to upgrade the Season Blessing Urn of Nightmares for increased glyph experience from Nightmare dungeons. Getting to level 100 from Nightmare dungeons, I was able to get 3 of my glyphs to level 21. Regardless of how you choose to level in World Tier 4, I highly recommend investing your Murmuring Obols into these 2 seasonal elixirs. Elixir of Holy Bolts is perfect for when you need some extra wave clearing ability. Once you get geared and you're tearing through groups of mobs by yourself, use the Elixir of Momentum. This adds a stacking movement speed bonus of 45% for 5 seconds, which is great for getting you to the next group of enemies. Thank you for taking the time to watch my latest leveling video for Diablo 4 Season 4. If you found this guide helpful, help me out by leaving a like and subscribe. Good luck and have fun.